What's up everybody, it's Sean here and I'm back today with another installment of my Dare to Dream video series. In this series, I take a look at shoes that aren't as commonly seen on YouTube, including high heat releases from the past and shoes that just have a special meaning in history. So today we're going to be doing a comparison video between the 1985 neutral or natural gray Air Jordan 1s with the 2021 counterpart. So the neutral gray Air Jordan 1 that just released is one of the most highly anticipated shoes of the year. Why is it so popular, you ask? Well, one of the main reasons is because this retro version is the very first time they've re-released following the original drop from 1985. So for the longest time, if you wanted an Air Jordan 1 that looked like this, other than doing your own custom pair, you'd have to source and wear an original 1985 version. So for the average person, it means it wasn't very accessible. And even though the 2021 retro was pretty limited as well, it gives us Air Jordan fans at least something newer that we can wear and we can enjoy for the years to come. So diving straight into the comparison, before I get into the details, I do want to say that this 2021 version is a size 10, which is my true size, whereas the 1985 version I have in my hand here is a size 11.5. So if you're wondering why the OG pair looks much bigger than the retro pair, part of the reason is because it's a full size and a half bigger. So with that clarified, now let's jump into the details. So first things first, the overall leather. So we got to take this with a grain of salt because this original pair is over 35 years old. However, my initial impressions were that the leather on the OG pair feels a bit softer compared to the retro. Both pairs seem to use a nice thick cut of leather, but for some reason the 85 pair feels a bit softer and a bit more broken in. If you look real close at the toe box perforations, the perforations on the 2021 version are a bit larger, but how they're distributed on the toe box are pretty similar. We have more leather wrapping around the front edge of the toe box, and the dual stitching that you see here, they're a little bit more spaced out on the 1985 version, whereas on the 2021 retro, the space between the threads are closer together. And then if you look at the toe box from the sides, the 2021 version has a bit more of a bulge, whereas the 85 version is a little bit more sleek. The laces on both pairs are pretty similar, and I'm guessing this is strictly because of the age of the shoe, but the 85 laces are more yellowed, whereas the 2021 retro is much more of a pure white. Underneath the laces we have the tongue, which in either case is constructed out of nylon. Both of the tongues feel pretty much identical to me, but again, due to age, the 85 pair has turned a bit yellow over time. And at the top of the tongue we have the tag, and I noticed that the Nike Air that's spelled out on the 85 pair, they're a bit more spread out compared to the retro version, which are a bit more bunched together. On the sides of the shoe we have the swoosh. So the swoosh on the 85 pair is much more of a rough texture. Honestly, it almost feels a bit like sandpaper, whereas on the retro pair, the swoosh here is constructed out of a much softer suede. Also, the color of the stitching is a bit different. For the OG pair, they use like a white thread, whereas on the retro pair, it's done in gray, which blends in much better with the swoosh. Moving on to the Wings logo on the lateral side of the shoe. For the 1985 pair, this is printed directly onto the leather, but it stays flat throughout. It's pressed on in this matte gray finish, whereas on the 2021 version, the Wings logo is embossed on the leather, and it's painted in a much lighter and glossy gray finish. Right above this, around the collar area, the original version, it just seems like they painted it gray, and there's not much texture to it, whereas on the retro version, it seems like it's covered in the suede material, so as a result, it has much more of that hairy texture to it. If we put the shoes side by side, here's a comparison of the overall shape of the back. So you'll see that the 1985 version, it's much straighter, and it's pretty much a straight vertical line from top to bottom. Whereas on the 2021 version, the back of the shoe has much more of a curved look to it, and it especially bulges out on the back heel. And overall, from a height perspective, I don't know how much of it is due to the fact that the OG pair is an 11.5 versus the size 10 for the retro, but it's very apparent that this OG version is much taller than the retro. This difference in height is also visible on the actual midsole as well. So the midsole on the 85 version is much taller than the retro, and you can see this when we look at this from multiple angles. In addition, the texture on the midsole is a bit different from either shoe. So the texture on the 85 version is a bit more fine, and it's not nearly as pronounced as the retro version. So you'll see the texture on this retro version, it's much more defined and much more obvious. The shape of the midsole is also a bit different as well. So on the 85 version, it's generally much more flat all throughout, whereas on the 2021 retro, there's much more of a curve to it, especially in the middle of the shoe. As I turn the shoe over to the bottom and compare the outsoles, so the overall general shape of the outsole is pretty much the same. But there's a few differences that I notice if we take a real close look. So generally speaking, there's a bit more texture on the outsole of the 85. On the retro version, this texture is a bit more flat and it's not as obvious, whereas if you run your fingers across the 85 version, you can really feel that gritty, bumpy feel. The Nike branding in the middle of the outsole is a bit different as well. It almost seemed like the branding was a little bit thicker on the 85 version. However, the stars at the top of the shoe, they're pretty much identical. I didn't notice anything too different. But again, on that circular traction pattern on the forefoot, you'll see how the texture on the 85 version is much more pronounced than the 2021. And then finally, the last difference I noticed was specific to this inner collar area. So to me, it felt like the 2021 version was a little bit more padded than the OG, and the weave or knit pattern on the 85 version was a bit tighter wound together, whereas on the retro version, it's more spaced out, and you can see the spaces between this nylon or mesh material a bit more clearly. So that pretty much wraps up my comparison of this 1985 natural gray Air Jordan 1s with its 2021 neutral gray retro. Comparing them side by side, while not obvious at first glance, there's definitely enough differences between the two to show you that Jordan Brand, while they're doing a good job, in my opinion at least, it's still not a close enough reproduction of the OGs. Either way though, it's again a step in the right direction. Hopefully Jordan Brand will get there eventually, and I'd be very happy to see like a true accurate reproduction of a Chicago Air Jordan 1 or a black and red or royal one. So let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think about this head-to-head comparison. Are you guys more of purists and you prefer the look and feel of the 85 version? Or do you like the changes and the overall shorter cut of the 2021 retro? If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Give me a follow on Instagram at esco8. Check out my Twitter account at sean.go and visit my website as well at seango.ca. So this has been another installment of my Dare to Dream series. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you guys all in the next one.